So, the Saturday Night Live atmosphere has changed since the old days, I gather, of Belushi and so on. Is it still legendary there, or are there old-timers who say, I survived the...
Yeah, I mean, there's people there who were there in '75, and, you know, obviously that was probably more of a, intense experience than the one I've had. I've been at Saturday Night Live for 3 years, and I think if you were there in the, from '75 to '80, you obviously were probably living through, it was such a happening then.
Yeah, do you think it was any easier to write for it then when you had all of the, it was kind of going against the culture, it had a sort of definition?
I just think maybe it was more, Saturday Night Live was, it was more of an event then, and I think the writing was great then. But I've heard people who were there at the time say that now it's a little harder because there's been such a comedy boom, there's been so much has been commented on that now, you have to work a little harder to find something that's, new or interesting.
Yeah. So also, did Lorne Michaels, was he quoted somewhere as saying, or was it perhaps to one of you, that on the Letterman show now you can kind of wink at the camera, but we have to hit a, really connect with the ball each time.
No, I've met Lorne Michaels.
Leading to the idea that it's somehow easier to write.
No, he mentions that every time I've met him about taking a full swing at the ball, and he's right. I mean, we can goof around. Again, it's that daily throwaway quality like a paper, but they've got to take a full swing at the ball. They set themselves up and say, here's our premise.
Right.
Now here it is for your formal consideration. Hope you like it.
And then when it happens, when the joke of the whole 10-minute sketch, which you've worked all week on, is revealed in the first minute and the audience doesn't like it, the machine has to just keep rolling, and that's often humiliating.
Have you noticed that if you go down the hall and bury your head and there's something where you can't hear the lack of laughter, it helps at times like that?
Well, actually, the thing that you do most commonly is when your sketch is really falling apart is you stand there and watch the monitor and laugh like, it's dying, I find this amusing too. And then you go home and, weep bitterly.
Yeah.
So.
Wishing you were anywhere else, including the Titanic, probably.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. Now, when does Letterman ever get annoyed at the writers and come out and say, God's wounds, these alleged scribes have not handed me anything in the humor vein in a fortnight? I would say
well, it's very much like that. They're quatrains. No, he would never do that, but he would be extremely picky and fussy beforehand. I mean, the turn-down rate is very high.
His selectivity is...
Yeah, so once he's picked something, he must think at least enough of it to give it a shot, and if it doesn't go, he's not going to storm off and crumple up the blue cards and...
He's been around long enough to know it doesn't pay to berate the writer. He didn't see, I can't imagine him in a rage of that kind anyway.
No, I would say he probably appears his crankiest right on the air, complaining about the...
Save it for the air.
Yeah, exactly.
Good idea. Yeah. But do you happen to know why he has a particular knowledge of buttons?
He seems to... You mean like
shirt buttons?
Shirt buttons? Well, of course, his London tailor on Savile Row. No, I've never heard that before. I know he has a vast knowledge of a lot of stuff, whether it's shock absorbers or names of Canadian provinces. He seems to have a wide-ranging knowledge in general, which makes him good to work with because he'll know what you're talking about or better than you do.
Well, that confirms something then. It also gives me a theory because I once showed him around New Orleans and he was amazed at what he thought was my esoteric knowledge of New Orleans, but I had been there before and knew a bit about it. So maybe that's why he made a point. See, I wore this shirt in case he saw this show because I wore it at his office one day and he said, "That's a Banana Republic shirt, I think, isn't it?" Yeah, he said, you know how I know? The buttons. I went, oh, right, of course. And this has puzzled me ever since.
Well, I think it's simple. I think he's just observant and has a good memory and is pretty smart, but...
He didn't want to just be competitive because I knew New Orleans, he showed he knew buttons.
Plus, well, he likes to wear his button knowledge on his sleeve.
I think you've handled yourself perfectly on this absurd subject that I brought up. If I were your employer, I would give you a raise. Could you guys each change jobs, you think, without any major adjustments? Do you see them as in one way?
I know Conan could do mine, just because, I mean, he's already got the sort of the more structure and so on. I mean, we're less writers, I think, on the Letterman show than just sort of idea persons. I mean, Dave Letterman's strengths, I think, are being spontaneous and responding to things. So our job is more giving him things to do where he can improvise and be himself and react to stuff. I'd have trouble, with just knuckling down to do characters and plot. And
oh, you could do it.
Wow.
It's easy.
All right, we'll make a bet right here. 50
Right
bucks.
here.
I say,
All
you
right.
switch
You
jobs.
could test this just for fun. No one would have to know. You could borrow each other's typewriters if they're known to your employers and just try it
They'd
once and
catch on.
see what happens.
They're pretty sharp.
What if one of you got the other one canned? That would not be nice.
No, I think I saw that on the Flintstones, though, once, where
See, it's not a bad idea for a sitcom.
I'm Barney to his Fred.
Yeah.
But
that's right, or Wilma goes down to the shale pit, and Fred tries, vacuuming with the mastodon or whatever.
I think the house is always filled with bubbles at the end.
It's
It always
just a
ends
good
that
rule
way.
of thumb on sitcoms
If we switch
anyway.
jobs, this studio will be filled with bubbles. I don't know why.
That's
That's how it's going to work out.
by the way, years ago, and I think even today, when they can't think of an ending for a sketch, everyone yells and throws food at each other or something.
The rave off. The number 11.
Is that called the rave off?
Yeah. Well, that's what, yeah. If you ever can't think of an ending for a sketch, it's always good to either have someone jump out a window and have someone else give one of those big reactions, which I do in every other sketch I write, or, have a big fight break out.
Yeah, the plunge to the plate glass. We can always have Paul Schaefer do a little song. That kind of seems to wrap things up, and then it's good night, everybody, drive safely.
Music's your best friend at a time like that.